This is the sphere from April 14th, 1945. This is an original. This is not a reprint. So, this is the very first time I've actually seen this. So, everything I see will be my first reaction. So, let's take a look at it. It's kind of a news magazine from London, England, which is incorporated the graphic. So, the Sphere and the Graphic, or maybe it was the Daily Graphic, were affiliated with each other. And the front cover is just ads. There's a stamp on it from Liverpool right here. It says Port Amenities Liaison Office, April 1945, and it's stamped in Liverpool. So I'm guessing that's where this was shipped to. This is their copy. There's an ad for King 6 cigars, Grant's Scotch whiskey, Bass, which is a beer, which we have here in America, Gray's cigarettes. If you're deaf, you'll hear better with Ardent E, the world's greatest hearing service. Ronick sanitary polishes to shine your floor with by appointment of His Majesty the King. At this point, it was George VI. William Younger Scotch Ale, Chaplin's Concord Port. Now on the back, there's an ad for Hooper cars. Philips lamps and radio. Woodwork polish and Highland Queen, some kind of, I guess it's Scotch whiskey. Norman Haddock is 40. He is a fine example of the man who realizes early exactly what he wishes to do and achieves it by determination and hard work. Manchester born and bred and educated. At 15, he entered the dyestuffs branch of the chemical industry as a lab boy. Despite long hours of work, he studied to such purpose in his leisure that he obtained first his matriculation and then his B.S. honors in chemistry at London University. So I guess this is a profile of this man right here. Edison. No other lamp has a name like Edison, which is interesting. It sounds a lot like Edison as a light bulb. Armstrong Siddeley cars. They beat the flying bomb. And there's a graphic that's really kind of like World War II. Here's a pack of cigarettes. Embassy. Light of distinction. Large size. Mild flavor. So, this article right here, the capture of a trainload of V-2 rockets, one of the 9 huge weapons found in the railway station at Bromskirchen. This was the first time the Allied troops had found any of the jet-propelled rockets in an intact state. So that's a V-2 rocket that they're reverse engineering, I suppose, to see how it works. I'm sorry I keep moving this plastic, but my cat, keeps wanting to play with it. A war newsletter number 293, and this is just some war news. Waterloo Run, cheap at the price, guessing the Yalta plan, Eisenhower's forecast of V-Day. Let's read that. Eisenhower's letter to the president outlining his notion of how the end will come does not laugh out of court our guesses as to the grand scheme of Yalta. It suggests, indeed, that in due course and by timetable, or according to schedule, the Big Three should be in a position to make a declaration with full confidence that it could not be upset, that all is over, bar the shouting, and that the flags can begin waving and the bells to ring. In short, that the war against Germany is over, and the war to liquidate the Nazi frontiers, I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced, began. That time, the time for the declaration is probably very near already. Not even Stalin nor Eisenhower can or would prophesy how long this mopping up may take. But if our guess as to the Yalta plan goes on being so satisfactorily justified by events, V-Day by declaration of the Allies cannot be far away. For when Russia is in Berlin's eastern suburbs and the Allies of the West are approaching the Elbe, when Holland is sealed off and Germany's North Sea and Kiel ports isolated, when Russians and Americans are joining hands west of Dresden, and the Danube line held north of Vienna, and the Italian armies neutralized, then long as the final cleanup may be, there can be no good reason why the lights should not go up and those of the Allies who feel like waving flags should not enjoy the exercise. Many of these prerequisites of the declaration are near accomplishment. Some may be regarded as unnecessary by those who know and lead. All opinion, informed and uninformed, seems to agree that the chance of an authority inside the Reich raising its head high enough to bow it is unconditional surrender is remote. Tower Hill replanned. Tower Green. I wonder if that's something that I've seen since when I was there. I guess it was different before 1945. I had to have some coffee. Here's some shots of destroyed ships. The wreck of the German warship Tirpitz in the Tromsø fjord in Norway. Now that's, just imagine seeing all of these pictures at the time, knowing that this was happening today. I mean, these massive warships being sunk. With the Allied armies in Germany, scenes in the occupied portions of the Reich. There's Heidelberg. And those look like American troops. Frankfurt. Oberbessenbach. Duisburg. It's just amazing to see this level of destruction. Bad Dürkheim, an appalling scene of wreckage at a spot where a German supply convoy was caught by Allied aircraft in the 7th Army area. Bombs and cannon fire from the planes brought the whole line to a standstill and allowed the complete destruction of all the vehicles fleeing along the wood-lined road. Infantry arriving later on the scene capsized and lorried and cars in the verges to the right and left so the advance into Germany could continue at unabated speed. Scenes like this were encountered on every road leading back to the Reich. Wow. It's kind of unreal. You can make out there's an ambulance there. Just, I mean, just the destruction and the wreckage lying everywhere, strewn everywhere. Jeanette, the longest Bailey Bridge ever built. Look at that. My goodness. There's a sign written by Adolf Hitler, and it says, "Give me 5 years and you will not recognize Germany again." And obviously, the irony of it after the destruction. I've never seen any of these pictures before. It is just, it's unreal. You don't see the, or maybe we're, in a way we see stuff on the History Channel or whatever, and maybe we get almost blind to it. But maybe just looking at these still images. Prisoners of war. German bread queue for civilians just to get food. German murder societies at work. Werewolves are but a modern version of the large number of German secret execution societies, the like of which no other nations ever possessed. Werewolves. 2 boys of 17 and 18, now prisoners of war. Both have less than 12 weeks training, and both were captured on the Rhine. A 16-year-old German soldier, after his capture of the 9th Armored Division of the U.S. First Army, he's crying. And these are children. They were sending children to the front. Werewolves. These are members of the German Volkssturm and Fire Brigade and Air Raid Wardens. They are being marched through the streets of Hamborn, a suburb of Duisburg. With them is a girl prisoner. Right there. Werewolves. The looters of Lippstadt, mostly girls, loaded with bottles of wines and liquors, of which there is evidently little shortage, which they have looted from the big stores and distillery just prior to the arrival of the 9th Army on the outskirts of the town. When they found that the German police had gone, the women smashed the windows of the shops, taking everything they could lay their hands on. Wow. The commander of the 21st Army Group, Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery. That's him right there. Montgomery. Miles Dempsey. Here's, of course, Dwight Eisenhower. There's General Patton speaking with Eisenhower. The men who are leading the Great Assault. The Great German Retreat. Scenes during the debacle of the German armies in the West. They're using horses at this point. RAF planes are strafing German trucks. Hanover and Nuremberg. The approach to Hanover, the historic Hanseatic center of the direct line to Berlin, showing how it was reached by the British armies moving eastwards from Wesel after the Rhine crossing. And that's Nuremberg. What do we have here? Some newspaper clippings I didn't expect to find in here. President Truman. This is the Kansas City Times from 1965. It's an article about Zionist leaders turn to Kansas Cityan. And here's some comics from 1965. Blondie, The Flintstones, Peanuts, Pogo, Maryworth. That's an interesting little bonus to find in the middle of this magazine. It's another article. Rift between Truman and Zionist bridged. And there was comics on this side too. Someone was collecting these articles about Haven for Meditation in Hollywood Hills. And more comic. I don't think they were saving the comics. They were cutting these articles out. Los Angeles, a hidden valley imbued with an atmosphere of unreality, nestles in the Hollywood Hills where they slope towards the sea. Silence reigns here, and the quiet which existed before the first Europeans, the Padres, trudged their tedious pace toward the shores of the Pacific. The Self-Realization Fellowship. I've never heard of this. So it's founded by a Hindu yogi. So it was kind of, I guess it was one of the earlier, you know how in Hollywood they, they're drawn to these sort of cults or offshoots of Buddhism or Hinduism that are kind of tailor-made for celebrities and rich people. It's my guess, at least, without having read the entire article. It is interesting to find this in here. Wasn't expecting that at all. Look at all these vehicles, these amphibious vehicles, and just think all those are gone now. I mean, with the few that are left maybe in museums. There's a really good movie you should watch. It's called The Best Years of Our Lives. It was made in 1945 or 46. And there's a great scene where these veterans return home from the war, and one of them was an Air Force officer. I think he was a navigator or a bombardier or something. And he goes out to a graveyard for planes because the war was over and the planes weren't needed anymore. And that's how he feels about himself too. And that's kind of like the idea of the movie, is what do these veterans do now that they're home? But just to see all of these huge bombers and fighters and cargo planes and troop transports and everything just sitting there to be destroyed. There was all of these planes and vehicles and all of this stuff, jeeps, tanks. Because when we demilitarized after the war, and these things were converted into automobiles and buildings and stuff. All the ships turned into targets for bombs. Hanau, Germany. I've been to Germany many times, and it's a beautiful, peaceful, quiet country. And this is just something that should remind you. We should never forget how the world was just completely turned upside down. Look at these pictures, where the fiercest fighting was fiercest. They capture a vessel and the airborne landings beyond the Rhine. I can smell this old newspaper smell. I feel like this thing hasn't been opened in years. It's a pleasant smell, at least to me. Oh, these paratrooper planes. Aerial photographs of German cities being bombed. It's hard to imagine that this was the world. I mean, this magazine, The Sphere, is a news magazine, but so far all of it is talking about the war. That was the news every day, the same thing. American flail tank. Based on the English, but yet different. In this, the flails were fixed to a supporting framework, which is lowered when the tank is flailing. Heavy chains beat the ground and detonate the enemy mines. So it's a minesweeper tank. That's what the purpose of that is. I think when I was in the Churchill War Rooms Museum, I believe they had a picture of this tank. It's a good idea because there were mines everywhere, and there's still mines everywhere all over the world. That was landmines are a terrible, awful thing, and they're placed, they're forgotten, or the people who placed them are killed, and there they stay, and they can still go off years down the road. The radio-controlled target plane technology. Another interesting thing about war is, generally speaking, war also heralds in all kinds of technology. World War II heralded in nuclear power, heralded in jet engines for planes, different types of machine guns and different types of ammunition, jeeps, helicopters. The war against Japan and all the island hopping, Iwo Jima. Interesting. Look at the. This is just something I noted. When they're talking about the war in Europe, it's gray or blue tone, and when they move to Japan, it's sepia tone. And I don't know if that's by design or what, but it's interesting. The interesting separation. The war. No, I take it back. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with that because we're talking about Europe again here. There's Brussels, Casino, Italy. I've been there to Casino. Paris. The only memory I have of Casino was we were on our way to Pompeii and we stopped like a roadside rest stop, and it was very cold there. We were there in December, and we were staying in Rome, so it was a day trip. But I remember being in Rome was, wasn't too bad. It was kind of like Alabama, maybe 50 or 60 degrees. But when we were in Casino, it must have been 20 degrees. It was so cold, and we weren't really. But then when we got down to Naples and then finally to Pompeii, I mean, I was taking my jacket off and rolling up my sleeves again. But in Casino, it was so cold, I just thought I was going to freeze to death. Chaplains being trained. The Chaplain Corps. Wow. Just a glimpse in a weird time to live in, 1940s. A lot of people who, my grandparents' generation, what they would say is, I survived the 40s. Looking at this, and of course what we know about it, it was something to survive. It was a decade where the entire world was on fire, and they had just come off of a Great Depression, and then suddenly they were thrust into a Great War. Here's some more ads. Field Aircraft Service. If you want to fly a plane for fun, or run an airline just because you like to be in an exciting new business, or build an airport because all the best towns will have airports, well, you probably won't want to care much about field service. You can have lots of fun and excitement without field's help. But if you're in the air to make a living, to give service to your fellow citizens, to make air travel safe and sound and worldwide, then talk to us. Good ground service is the basis of successful air service. Fueled aircraft service. So, wow. More dependable than ever, the Austin, for after the war. Among the many advances which will distinguish Austins after the war are improvements to the oil circulation in the engine, giving better lubrication and longer life to bearings, protection for exhaust valves, lubricated timing chain and patented rubber tensioner, softer rubber engine mountings, all contributing to greater silence and durability, improved radiator, steering and gearbox, and quieter, sturdier back axle. In these and other ways, wartime experience will make the Austin more comfortable, more economical, more dependable than ever. Kia Ora looks forward. Meantime, there is an acute shortage of bottles for wartime soft drinks. Will you please return your empties to your retailer? Looking forward to the end of the war is the theme of all of these ads. You see her right now, she's a nurse, but she's thinking about being at home making cocktails. They're talking about what are we going to do with airplanes now that the war's over, what kind of car we're going to drive. Production for prosperity. The value to the nation of the great motor industry continues to be amply demonstrated. So will it be again in peace, carrying loads on the roads, enriching leisure with pleasure. Cider, with a name you know behind it. Whiteways, 16 per screw quart flagon, and 1/6 per screw quart flagon or flagon. I haven't heard that word too much. We used to pride ourselves that there was no part of Britain where you could not get Whiteways cider. Now that has changed. Cider, like many other things, is being zoned to save transport and labor. We can send our cider only to certain areas, and many people who for years have held Whiteways in high esteem must now be denied it until zoning ends. To the lucky ones in the Whiteway zones, we extend our congratulations. To those who must forego their favorite cider, we offer our sincere regrets. Austin Reed service, delicious pastry, use plain flour and Borax baking powder, Golden Guinea French sparkling muscatel. And once again, we're talking about the war ending and supplies are going to come up, so don't forget this name. At the first sign of sore throat, gargle with Listerine. Rolls Royce, Schweppes table waters. When I was in Paris, every single day, as often as I could, I would find myself a Schweppes grapefruit bottle of soda, and it is the best. If you're ever there, and I've only found it in Paris, if you ever get a chance, Schweppes grapefruit soda. Oh my gosh, it is so good. I stumbled upon it in the metro because it's in every metro stop in Paris. You can find the Schweppes grapefruit. It is so good. I highly recommend it. Craven Plain cigarettes. And look at this, VAT 69. Did you ever watch Band of Brothers? Well, this was the drink that Captain Nixon was always drinking. He had a drinking problem. He always drank this kind, VAT 69. I've never actually seen this in person. I don't even know if you can get it in America. I'm not much of a drinker, so I don't go up. But I don't know if you can get it. I've never even seen a bottle. But there's an ad for it. Interesting. Solo. Solo means real orange juice. Netflix hair dressing. Conway Stewart pins. Queen's Hotel Penzance. Places to stay in London. Pears Soap. Preparing to be a beautiful lady. Help the NSPCC to defeat the evil of child neglect. Lemon Heart Rum. Burmaline bread for tea. Good, pure, delicious food. A treat to eat and easily digested. Moss Brothers and Covent Garden. Oh, look at that car. Alvis. Wardonia for better shaves. Sparklets. Bulbs. Please go easy with the soda and return empty bulbs promptly to your usual supplier. Old Angus Scotch. And we get to the end of the magazine. So that is the Sphere. First time I've ever opened one up, and it's very interesting. £1.06 was the price of this. Printed Commonwealth House 1, New Oxford Street in London. Very interesting magazine to read, and we got some surprises in the inside of it with some newspaper clippings from the 60s and a glimpse of the 1940s from the perspective of this London magazine. So I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like my channel, please subscribe and click the bell icon. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, or leave a comment. And I get around to answering my comments. Generally answer them all at once every week or so. So I will answer them. And I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll keep making them. Bye now.